Welcome to the Woman Aesthetic Podcast. Join us in seeking deeper meaning and striving to live fully in our womanhood. Welcome to the Woman Aesthetic Podcast. I'm your host, Anna. Today, I will be speaking with Beth Davis, one of the women behind Blessed is She, on the topic of the pillars of true sisterhood. So Beth Davis is a lover of Jesus, a retired youth minister, and the director of formations for Blessed is She. She's passionate about teaching women how to develop an intimate relationship with Jesus in prayer through writing, speaking, and mentorship. Beth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. What a joy.
Well, I feel the exact same way. First, before we start, I just want to say massive congratulations to you and to Jenna on the 10th anniversary of Blessed is She. This is such an incredible milestone, and I have personally witnessed the beautiful ways that Blessed is She has impacted not only my friendships, but others as well.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. All glory to God, really, because only He could have thought of this ministry and woven all of our lives and stories together, not just Jenna and myself, but there's a team of nearly 50 writers and more who have kind of come and gone, in different seasons of life. So really, there have been hundreds, thousands of women who have been a part of this community and made it what it is, thanks to this shared core value of prayer and community.
Well, I think honestly, it's wonderful. And like I said, Blessed is She played a key role in my adult friendships, particularly when I moved out to the Midwest and I basically didn't know anybody. And so, everyone said to me that, you're going to change and your friendships are going to change as you're going through your 20s. And now that I'm basically 30, yes, that is absolutely true. And it was really hard for me to understand and imagine what that would be like as I stood there in my early 20s. And I think it's definitely one of those things that you have to go through to really believe it. But now that I am at the end of my 20s, and it's interesting reflecting on my adult friendships and how they've changed and how they've matured. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think makes adult friendships different from those that you form in childhood? Like, what is your perspective on friendship as a whole?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's born of really a pain point, isn't it? That as we get older, we have the experience of losing some friendships or just not jiving in the way that we once did with people that we thought we would be friends with forever. That was certainly true for me. I had a very close group of girlfriends in high school, and thought, we'll always be this close. And then we go to different colleges and we stay in touch, but we change so much individually. We become so much more ourselves, or not, and sometimes those dynamics no longer work. It was the same in college. I had this group of friends, and we were fond of saying, like, we're family. We would do these big family dinners, and for years we celebrated like Thanksgiving together, even post college. And over the years now, I'm into my 40s, so I've had many different seasons of friendships and grieved a lot of friendships. So it does change. I think it's important to just acknowledge that. So for anyone who's listening, who's experienced this change in friendship, oftentimes uninvited, unwanted, but we kind of become aware like this isn't working anymore. Or as you described, we move somewhere else and now suddenly it's harder to keep up with those friendships. And really out of necessity, we need new friendships. So for me, the premise of the question is, yes, friendships change. That doesn't always mean they end, but friendships do change. And I think just to give ourselves permission to say it's okay that a friendship changes. It's okay that I've changed. It's okay that my um, values or my direction in life, my priorities have narrowed. It's okay that the pace of my life slowed down or sped up. Just to give ourselves permission um, to let our friendships change and really to let us change.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is so true because that was one of the things that, you can't, you're going to change and I knew I was going to change and I didn't know how. And for me in my early 20s, I graduated college and right afterwards got married and uh, you know, I don't know, 8 months later got pregnant, so my change was very fast, but I didn't really think through how that was going to change my friendships. And it definitely did because, my girlfriends and I went through, the careers first and then getting married or not getting married at all and focusing on career and different goals. And yeah, it was just very interesting to see the ebb and flow and the just people that you end up keeping up with and some that you don't. And I think partially, yes, it is because your life is changing. There's different things filling your day and filling your responsibilities. But how would you intentionally make space for friendships um, in your life amongst those adult responsibilities?
Yeah, again, I would say we almost have to start with like the most basic premise to say friendship is important to me.
Mm.
I think a lot of people are hurt in friendship because we think it should be easier. We're disappointed or we're discouraged, whether it's in new or old friendships, because we just simply don't have the time or we don't make the effort or the other person doesn't have the time or doesn't make the effort. So I think intentionality is key to this conversation, to just acknowledge this is something that's important to me. And maybe in the last season, maybe you were just got married or just had a baby. Maybe you just moved or just started a new job. There are different times in our lives where we have less bandwidth. But when we become aware of that lack of community, lack of, real like heart connections,
Mhm.
we really have to acknowledge that lack and actually make an intentional decision to make room for that in our lives. And I would say just very practically, um, that means we often have to be the one that does the inviting. I think we all want to be the one who's invited and included. Um, it's funny, that group of friends that I mentioned in college where we were having these like family dinners and every weekend we have, we're spending time together Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. Um, but there were times my roommate and I would just get so frustrated. Like if we don't plan something, nothing happens.
Mhm.
And then we would tell everybody like we're not planning anything. You guys figure it out, and then nothing would happen. And so
Mhm.
we just kind of had to say like that's fine. We're going to be the planners. We're going to be the ones that reach out. And I think it takes courage and it takes generosity to be the one that reaches out, to be the
Mhm.
one that extends the invitation.
Mhm.
But if the desire of your heart is for connection, then we have to make the move to connect.
Mhm. Yeah, like you said, yeah, there's every friend group has to have that person, but then you're like, really, I'm the person? Okay,
Totally.
like I didn't think I was gonna be like I kind of think I'm the kind of the person where I'm the one reaching out and I don't mind doing it because I just don't mind doing it. It just comes more naturally, maybe. I don't really know. Um, yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, sometimes it's like, man, I haven't talked to this person and I wish they would have called, but I guess I'll call and it's fine, but there is that like you just have to accept kind of I don't know that's your job in the friendship and that's okay. But you do have to accept that you can't sit there and be like poor me. Like that will not serve anybody and it won't serve the friendship and yeah. You do miss that opportunity for generosity kind of like what you were saying. I think I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Well, and there's something to be said. If you're always the one reaching out, if you're always the one making the effort, if when you do spend time together, it's pretty one-sided. I mean, it will become clear this is a friendship where there is reciprocity, but right now she's in a busy season, or right now she's really going through something hard. And so I am going to be the one to make more effort. I am going to go out of my way more often for this friend, but I know it will come back around. Not that we're keeping score, but I think we all have a sense like, okay, I may be the one to always reach out and invite her to lunch, but she always asks about my family.
Mhm.
She always cares about this thing going on at work. She asks good questions. So again, there's discernment there. Even if we are always the one to reach out, I think we get a sense over time. This is a friendship that's worth that effort.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think the discernment piece was what I personally learned going through my 20s. Because in college, everybody's your friend. People on the team are your friend. People in your class are your friend, but as you become an adult and you're making adult decisions, you do have to discern. And I had to learn how to discern um, that and not think of it in the same way that I thought of college and friendships. And everyone's my friend. I had to really, yeah, I just had to discern. But and I think we talked about, some of the common obstacles that we're facing, as adults. But if we're really looking to form a sisterhood
Mm.
in our lives, with the people around us, how would you define sisterhood, and what are the core values that we should be looking for? What, in your personal opinion, what are the core values of sisterhood?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because Blessed is She, this Catholic women's ministry that I work for. One of our core values is sisterhood. And I described how my friend group in college, we called each other family, but ultimately that didn't really play out over time. There
Mhm.
wasn't there wasn't the responsibility, and really there shouldn't be. I mean, we were in college. And so I was hesitant too about this word sisterhood. Like, how is this our core value? How do we really live this in a way that's not trite, that we're not calling it something really sweet, but not living up to it? And so for me, I've learned what sisterhood is in my friendship with Jenna. So Jenna is the founder of Blessed is She. She invited me to speak on the very first retreat about a year and a half into the ministry's life. And we just connected in such a crazy beautiful way, like from the word go. I remember her calling me right after the retreat and saying, like, let's do this, let's like take this on the road, let's we'll have you like share the gospel in people's backyards and we'll do worship. And I'm like, what is this? you know and there was like that electricity and excitement and joy, but I didn't know how to trust a friend. I didn't know how to go all in. And truthfully, it wouldn't have been appropriate. Like, we didn't know each other well enough.
Mhm.
But in the past 8 years now, that we've been friends, we've traveled together. She's had 4 children since then. Um, my life has gone through many changes. I've moved, different relationships, our own like family challenges and joys. Over time, that friendship has been purified and solidified. We show up for each other. We talk about hard things. I would say, most importantly, what I've learned, one of the greatest gifts Jenna has given me, is that I learned about conflict in relationships, and that a conflict doesn't mean the end of a friendship, but can actually mean a deeper friendship.
Mhm.
And so I have one sister who's 11 months older than I am, and uh, we're not close. We've never been close. Um, and that was a real pain point for me. And so to meet Jenna and to experience a friend who walks me through some of the most painful moments of my life, but also like celebrates and champions me in hard things and like victorious things and new projects. And there, I learn. I just had to learn. I feel like I'm not giving you a great answer to this,
No,
but
it's an honest answer. It's not, I love that it's not like, oh, let me give you this like beautiful philosophical. This is like
yeah,
real personal. I love this. Like this is, I think a lot more people will relate to these examples that you're giving than if you gave us like this
yeah.
flowery, like I love this. Yeah, please continue.
I think I think maybe if I listen to myself and I reflect on my friendship with Jenna, which really is close the way that I hoped a sister would be close, right? And how healing and how redemptive that friendship has been. I would say it took time. And I think the desire of our hearts as women is to have that immediately. Um, and sometimes I think we can do this romantically too. We can mistake chemistry for connection, or we can mistake chemistry for intimacy. And the same is true in friendship. But intimacy is built on trust, not on chemistry, not even on like mutual likes. And trust is built over time.
Mhm.
And so over time, like again, through conflict, through seasonal changes, through yeah, I'm thinking of an example. I did a project outside of Blessed is She that was very dear to my heart, but it took a lot of courage for me to speak about um, women struggling with pornography. And I partnered with a ministry called Covenant Eyes, and we created this beautiful like 3-week program for women to be
Wow.
set free from pornography and to even understand themselves, the draw to it. And so it was something totally apart from like my work with Blessed is She. Um, and so I have this interesting relationship where Jenna is both my boss and my best friend. And I wrote a blog and shared it with the Blessed is She community about this resource because I'm just so passionate about women uh, being healed and set free through Jesus Christ. And as soon as the blog came out, Blessed is She has a member community. And I was on the app kind of interacting with women, and Jenna had shared that blog and just said, like, I'm so proud of you. And it's such a simple thing, but I never asked her to do that. And I was even a little bit shy because it's such a vulnerable thing. Uh, but Jenna championed me and cheered me on. And that is such a small example, but it's yeah, it's an illustration really of the kind of seeing and knowing and loving that I experience in sisterhood with Jenna.
Mhm. That is like that is so absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you could see, I was like starting to tear up because I have a friend here who I met through Blessed is She, and it was like a shoot, what were we studying? I think it was the Beatitudes or something. But I got invited, and the woman who was leading it, I always tell her this, and this is how I introduce her to everybody. But I'm like, she was the one who was sitting there leading this study, and I thought I would love to be friends with her, but she's just like way too cool for me. Like, she's out of my league. There's no way. Like, she was just radiating joy. Like, she was the first person I ever saw radiating joy. And I think
Wow.
that's why I was like, I want to be friends with this person. Like, what is it about her? And yeah, getting to know her, she has like, all these boys. She's a mom to all these boys, and like just like so peaceful, so joyful. I love going over to her house because even though you hear, boys running around and, tackling and whatever, there is still this sense of peace and sense of calm and sense of joy. And I don't know. I was just thinking about that, and she's like one of those people that I called when hard things happen because I am far away from my family. So she was the one that I called. She was the one that came over to watch my kids when I had the baby. Like she is that person, and we've bonded. Like you said, it takes time. You might have like this chemistry or whatever, but it doesn't, there needs to be layers. There needs to be trust. And she's definitely someone that I've I think developed that with. And I don't know. I always tell my husband, he's like, oh, she came over, and I was like, yeah, she did. She stayed for like 4 hours. And he's like, you talked right as she came through the door. I was like, yes, we talk from the moment she takes off her shoes to the moment she leaves. Like
Yeah.
it is like that heart connection that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, we all want that from the start because it's so good. We
Yeah.
want that from the start, but it doesn't come from the start, and it's hard um to I think to wait sometimes for it to develop. Um, but what do you think, in your opinion, makes this bond between women so uniquely powerful?
Yeah. Well, I want to share an anecdote really based on what your friendship, what you just shared. I remember a couple of years ago, I was introduced to a gal who had just moved here. We had a mutual priest friend in common. He was in from out of town, connected us at like a parish event. And to be honest, I liked her. It seemed like we had some things in common, but my plate was really full. Um, and she was about to get married, and it just seemed like it's not a great time. But we just got coffee one time. And then a few weeks later, I was going to a daily mass on a Saturday morning. I said, "Hey, would you want to get breakfast after?" And we talked for a couple of hours. And it is a little bit like dating, getting to know someone. We did like each other right away, but the trust wasn't there.
Mhm.
And I have a distinct memory. I was driving home from being out of town. I had a long car ride, and I thought, I'm going to give her a call and just see if we're the kind of friends who can just chat. When it's not like sitting down trying to get to know each other, like less formal. And I remember being on that call, and there was something going on in my heart, but it felt very vulnerable to share. And I just I decided to test the water. I'm going to bring up this thing. I'm going to share a little bit of this situation, not to test her, but to kind of see how comfortable I feel revealing my heart and how she receives me. Because we need to acknowledge, like, not everyone is safe with our hearts. I often think of this scripture about throwing pearls before swine. And I'm not certainly not calling all women or other people swine, but there are relationships that just don't have the capacity for that kind of depth. We don't have the same core value of Jesus Christ, or there hasn't been enough care or interest shown in order for me to really divulge something very deep and very personal. And so on this phone call, I took something that, is personal, is was important to me, but was not like my deepest, darkest secret. And I thought, okay, I'll just try this. And she received me so beautifully. And this is now so characteristic of my friendship with her. I discovered in her this great gift of wisdom, something that I did not know about her. And to be honest, I haven't encountered in many people. And so now, after years, I think 3 or 4 years now of being friends, oh my goodness, more than that, 4 or 5 years of being friends, I can tell you when I have a situation where I know I need wisdom, I need a different perspective, that's the friend I call. But
Mhm.
that developed over time. She proved that to me over time. And again, not that I was testing her, but I was building trust. We were building a foundation of a friendship. And so again, kind of to my earlier point that it takes time, and it can begin with chemistry, but trust is built through that mutual sharing of hearts over time.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's really hard to do. That is really hard to do because
Yeah.
I've I don't know why it lines up this way, but like when I do meet new people, it's and maybe it is like me wanting to test the waters because I'm like, well, if we're gonna be friends, let's just test the waters. So I don't let's go for it. What are we what are we waiting for? But there is always like, should I share this? And maybe it is the Holy Spirit prompting us because he wants us to have something deeper he wants that for women. But yeah, there needs to be that trust. There needs to be loyalty, and you need to know that that's gonna be happening with this person. You don't have to worry about, you know, it being interrupted, or I don't know quite the word for it, but yeah, you just need to be sure in the trust. You need to be sure in the loyalty. But do you think, I mean,
I love that you mentioned the Holy Spirit because I think we can go deep with people quite fast. I just think that's rare. I'm not
mhm,
saying it can't happen and this is the only way to build a friendship. That's just one friendship. On the other hand, I shared my experience with Jenna where we kind of went all in, but over time that connection, that friendship, that sisterhood not only developed but matured. So there are
mhm,
many ways that this can look. I think I just had to learn I have such a sensitive heart
mhm,
that I need to kind of take my time. My instinct too would be to go all in with people and yet I'm not really I need to be sure that that's a trustworthy person. Uh,
mhm.
that someone is worthy of my heart and I strive to be trustworthy for their hearts as well. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you kind of picked up on it. I do have that. And that's one of the things I had to discern in my 20s, where it's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't have to right away go to someone. Like, sit with it. Let it just see how you feel with it. And maybe if you feel the same way about this tomorrow and you're not sure like where to go from here, then call that person tomorrow, and seek that support. But yeah, my and I think maybe it was because I lived with my friends, in college, we were so close living together that it felt natural to just be like, oh, I'll just go to them because, I could run down the hall and go to their room and be like, I have, whatever. um, but it's not always appropriate, especially as you're an adult and there's different people and there's different factors, and it's not always appropriate to run to someone right away. And you have to think about it and you have to discern. But how do you think, women can support each other in this struggle without it? Yeah, I mean, I guess we do have to have the loyalty and the trust, but when we do have that, how can we support each other?
Yeah. Well, I think it's so beautiful that lesson that you learned about kind of not testing other people, but like testing the emotion or testing the thing that you want to share. And I would say, which I think is implicit to what you shared, bringing it to the Lord first and kind of wrestling with things with the Lord instead of running to another person to help you understand it or to be consoled. And I was really inspired by you sharing that because I can still do that. Even I'm 41 and I still want to I'm a verbal processor. I want
Oh,
to
same,
yeah.
same.
Yeah, well, here we are on a
I
podcast, of
know,
course.
right? Sharing our
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
even for me at times that there's a discipline to do that, to kind of sit with the emotion and with the Lord first before picking up the phone. Yeah, I remember in college, the Lord was probably trying to teach me the same thing that you, I think, learned better than I did, earlier than I did, is that sometimes I would call. I mean, I have, thanks be to God, I have a lot of close friends. And I remember I would like go through and call a couple of them and like nobody would answer. And it was like, I am calling, three or four different people and not one person is available. Like, I need to get the hint that the Lord wants to talk to me about this,
Oh,
to
I
talk
know.
to
This is like, I feel like I'm speaking to myself in the mirror.
him.
Like, actually.
Yeah. So it's a discipline for sure. And I think the Lord, he laughs with us. It's not about getting it right or um but I think in the same way we're speaking of trust being built with girlfriends, we have to build that trust over time with the Lord as
Mhm,
well. And I think we want it. We love God, we're we want to trust him. But our desire and our experience or our emotions don't always match up. And so we have to build that trust with him too.
mhm. Yeah, and I think yeah, calling people and being like, okay, get the hint, like what? I have no friends. Like literally, and you're in your lowest moment and you're like, I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
somebody. But it is oftentimes that it's the Lord saying, like, no, like there's a reason they're busy and there's a reason I'm available. But I remember like I knew why I would intentionally do this where I would be like, I will pray about this after I talk to someone because I wanted someone to sit there and hold me while I'm struggling through something. And
yeah,
when someone can verbally say to you, I see you, I'm sorry this is happening, you know, let's pray together or whatever it is, like you just want to be seen and understood. And you don't
yeah,
always hear that, you don't always feel that after you've sat with it with the Lord. I know I don't. I think it takes time. I think it's partially why he's like, Anna, you need to recognize what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then like decide what you're gonna do with like we can do it together, but you need to recognize it for yourself. And then, I see him usually acting through now like my children or my husband bringing me flowers or my kids bringing me their blankies or whatever it is, like making me a card. And it's you see God and with the people in your lives and often not in the ways you expected,
yeah.
at least not the ways I expected. And so yeah, sitting with the Lord with it has been the lesson of my
Yeah.
20s.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it is both and, right? The Trinity is a communion of persons. So the Lord is not saying to us, it's just you and me, kid, like you can't have any support. Friendship is like the lesser of two goods, but it's both and. He's giving us himself and he gives us community. And
Mhm.
he's working in that community and in that friendship as well. But there is, just as we mature, there is a deepening of the trust with the Lord as well.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
what do you believe are the essential elements of a
Mm,
supportive and, thriving community?
yeah. That's a great question. I was about to just barrel on with like the answer that probably means the most to me, but then I kind of stepped back into it. I think there are a lot of ways you could answer that question, but what I have found to be a successful formula for friendship is a shared vision. And what I mean by that is really a shared value. And what I mean by that, hold on.
Just pay. We'll peel the onion. We'll peel the onion.
Yeah,
It's fine.
I my experience of Blessed is She has radically changed my understanding of friendship, sisterhood, community. What I think is so unique and really misunderstood about Blessed is She is that it is for all women, every age, every stage of life, different liturgical preferences, different personalities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultures, different countries. And for the past 4 years, I've done a program called the Well Mentorship. So this is what I'm about to share is true of Blessed is She in general, but I saw it in the most tangible way through the Well mentorship. So these women would sign up, 10 of them at a time, to be in a small group just based on the day and the time that worked best for them.
Mhm.
And I would have 10 women, strangers from, again, all over the world, all different personalities, different backgrounds, different wounds, different preferences. And yet, when we got on that call, that video call, and began to talk about our prayer, began to talk about our desires, began to talk about our struggles with identity or wounds, because we had that shared core value of Jesus Christ, because we all wanted the same thing. We want to grow closer to God. We want to we all want to grow closer to Jesus through the church. Now, not everyone in those groups, if you can believe it, was Catholic. We had non-Catholics come and do those small groups. But it was the most fascinating thing to see that really at the center of it all is just this desire for love himself, Jesus Christ. And that bound together and bonded people of all different backgrounds, like the wildest people, people that I would never put together, who actually had like a real sweetness and tenderness and like fierceness for one another. It always surprised me, even like, well, first of all, who the Lord brought into those groups was crazy. Even like similar experiences, like very niche experiences that someone would share. And it could just be like a hobby, or it could be, a child's disability. Like there would be someone else in that group that had that same situation. And so, because we all have that same core value, and because we all proceed in through the well and in conversation with really a vulnerability and a generosity, like, okay, I'm going to go first, I'm going to share this thing. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that we didn't all, grow up the same way or like the same shows. I think we can be just so, um, I don't know, the only word I can think.
Surface level, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say we can be kind of like snobby about like, well, I like this kind of thing, and this is like my preferred kind of person that I hang out with. And then we meet
Mm-hmm.
someone who has this unbelievable heart and we desire the same thing. It's not as natural a friendship on the surface, but on a deeper level, that person has so many gifts to give. And oftentimes strengths that we ourselves don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So when people come to Blessed is She, and it's not to say that we haven't provided different resources or opportunities for people to get support in their stage of life, in their vocation or whatever. But people are always like, I want to meet other stay-at-home moms of littles. I want to meet other empty nesters who have been widowed, and it gets like more and more niche.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to be said for talking to someone who gets it, right? You're like in it, in the trenches. We all desire so much to be understood. But I have learned the power of the diversity of experience, the diversity of preference, the diversity of personality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've met like some of the most inspiring people who are both older and younger, married, widowed, like
Mm-hmm.
when I just let the Lord surprise me, because ultimately they're revealing another side of the face of God to me. They're revealing something so beautiful when I just move through my life and I only hang out with all the people who like the same things that I do, all the same people from my neighborhood or from high school. We get kind of locked in, and we're not growing and flourishing in a way that sometimes surprises us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
Mm-hmm.
found with those kind of unexpected friendships.
Yeah. Yeah, it is those, yeah, the ones that you're like, oh, we would have nothing in common. You just look at them, you're like, there's no way. And then you start talking, you're like, oh my goodness, like what? Like, where is this coming from? This is so out of left field for you, but it is really beautiful because the unexpected, you allow room for to receive that person without even knowing it because you're not putting up barriers, and the Lord's like, great, I'm going to use that space and I'm going to show you the power of connection, like what I can bring together. And I don't know. Yeah. I
That
love that. That is crazy though, hearing, like all these women came together and just starting that's just beautiful. That's amazing.
I I mean, it's just the genius of the church, honestly, of the body of Christ. When we go to mass with everybody. We are one body. And then again, that there's nothing against like getting support in certain stages of life. People going through grief,
Hmm.
or infertility, you need a level of care that's specialized. But that's not all of the time. Like we need the wisdom, we need the maturity, we need the diversity of the whole church, even people that we wouldn't naturally click with.
Hmm. I think also when yeah, when you're going through something like you said, like widows or empty nesters, it's these things you want to connect with other people who might be going through the same things because you want to be held, you want to be understood. But sometimes I think when people are still carrying those wounds that haven't healed yet, they can't hold you in the way
Yeah.
that you need it to be held. So sometimes you do need to be open to meeting someone who maybe is not going through the same things, because then they can actually receive you and see this on like a much not in this like tunnel vision of I know exactly what you're talking about, but something that's just like I can see outside of it. I can see the hope that can come from you giving yourself, to this healing or like joining this group or whatever. I think, yeah, and we sometimes just kind of close ourselves off to that. Um, but I think that also leads into this wonderful idea of women nurturing each other.
Yeah.
We're built, one of our, wonderful gifts is to nurture, and we do that so well with each other. But I wanted to ask you, aside from that, beyond nurturing, how can women lead or contribute to our communities in ways that honor our gifts?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love that you use the word nurture, because it's who we are as women. We have a warmth and a softness. Now that can be hardened. That can be through our experience, based on our personalities. I'm not saying that we're kind of a one size fits all in that nurturing, but I do think that's how we were designed. It's obviously biologically, it's who we are. It's what we're meant to do, is to nurture. We do it with our literal bodies. And so it makes sense too that we do that with our souls, with our hearts, with our not only our bodies in terms of giving birth, but just through affection, through presence. Um, and another way I think to talk about that would be to say that each and every one of us is really called to develop and to mature into a spiritual motherhood. Whether you're a biological mother or not, this is what God is growing us into, that we would nurture souls, that we would love people like the Blessed Mother, that we would welcome people like Christ did. And yeah, so I'm kind of recently really captured by this idea that this is the call for every woman who is a Christian, is developing into this spiritual motherhood. Now, I think in order to get there, we really have to open up ourselves to the Lord, particularly opening up like our wounds and our stories, because as you just mentioned, we can't receive other people if we're kind of still triaging our own stuff. And again, we're that doesn't mean you like go away and you deal with that in isolation, and that you can't love or serve anyone until all of your wounds are healed. But it is something that I think we're actively not working on, but opening up to the Lord.
Mhm.
Like when we do have a conversation with a friend and oh, there's some jealousy there, or boy, that she got that beautiful blessing and I feel discouraged in my life, in my weight. Maybe everyone's getting pregnant and you and your husband have been trying, when that's not happening, we can notice these things come up. And when we become aware of that, just opening that up to the Lord, because we want to genuinely be there for other people, and we want to be present and honest with the Lord. And so I think one of the primary ways that we can become a spiritual mother really is just to open up our hearts to the healing power of the Lord, and really to the healing power of friendship, being received by other women and receiving other women.
Mhm. Yeah. I think also like going deeper when we do open our hearts to the Lord, there's that opportunity to gain wisdom from him. And
Mhm.
I don't know what is the word for wisdom. There's like the Latin word for wisdom anyway, but I think it's female, like it's feminine, whatever. I
Oh,
haven't taken Latin a very long time, but from what I'm thinking, it's anyway, but that connecting to like in the Bible talking about when you're supposed to look for a wife, she needs to have wisdom. Like it's all flows, it's supposed to connect to the feminine because we are able to look at the whole person. And so we see so much more than just, oh, you're really good at this, or oh, you're really bad at this. Or, like we see the whole person. We see the areas that they struggle, but how we can nurture that growth, how we can bring that out of them and then continue to see them flourish. And like it goes beyond motherhood, like you said, it absolutely does. And we're supposed to do that. And I don't know, I can go off on that. I just like I love that absolutely. And I think we sometimes it's so hard to connect to other women and we go through this like isolation. And I don't know what it is, but for people who are so longing to connect, I see women feeling isolated the most. And I mean, I think men deal with it in a different way. But for women, it's like, I need a person. Like, I can't just sit here and like do my workout. That might help. But, but like, I need a person because that's what I'm missing. And so, how do you see, community building as a
yeah.
means to foster this connection?
Well, I want to comment on what you said. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we isolating ourselves? And I think the simple answer that we often discount is that we have an enemy who wants to keep us in isolation, who wants to keep us in shame because he doesn't want us to be free. He doesn't want us to flourish. He doesn't want us to experience connection and community, which leads to love and harmony. He loves division.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something to notice and something I try to notice in myself. Like, wow, I'm pulling back, I'm isolating when actually what I need is to push against that and to reach out. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something to become aware of personally, just that tendency to isolate. I that felt like such an important point that there is an
Mm-hmm.
enemy to community. There's an enemy to friendship. It's not that everyone's a bad friend or that I'm a bad friend and there's something wrong with me. There is kind of someone behind the scenes who is against, who is causing division. He's against the desire of our hearts, especially godly friendship that will lead us to heaven. Um, Now I forgot the second part of your actual question because I really wanted to share that.
The second part was when we go through this isolation, how do you see, the community, building of our community, as the means to kind of foster connection that we're missing?
Oh yeah. Well, I think in some ways it's just very gritty and we just have to persevere because when we're tempted to isolate, at least for me, I would describe it as like being a little sea cucumber and like kind of going within myself and just wanting to kind of, yeah, get low and small. Whereas this is truly an image from my prayer. Whereas instead, when I'm tempted to that and I just want to kind of collapse, instead, I will literally think of a starfish and I'm like pushing against that, which is actually an Ignatian principle. He speaks about in the rules for discernment. Or is that right? The rules for discernment. Yeah. He'll speak about this principle of agere contra, to push against. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to do that. We have to like radically push against. And so it's not pretty. We're not always going to feel it, but we have to persevere in trying. We have to call again. We have to text again. We have to
Mhm.
try a Bible study again, even if, we didn't love our last small group. So I would say for for me, one of the keys to the spiritual life is to push against. Even things
Mhm.
like I'm in my holy hour or I'm in my personal prayer time and it's been, kind of lackluster. I'm not really getting anything, which is such a wrong view of prayer. Oh, maybe I'll just wrap up 5 minutes early. No, we have to push against that and keep our resolution. I think the same is true in friendship when we're tempted to shut down, to isolate. I can't trust anyone again. I don't want to. put myself out there to push against that, and to reach out, literally just to send a text message to someone, or
Mhm.
Advent is coming up. I'm not sure when this will air, but like asking a friend or a small group, can we do this devotional together? Can we just talk like once a week for the next 4 weeks? I'm not asking you to get married. We're only meeting for 4 weeks, but to try again.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you say that, I'm like, man, I'm so guilty of that. I have not, yeah, sat down and done like a study or something that really brings out the deeper
Mm,
parts, the deeper longings of like my soul to connect with other women. How can I connect with them in that way? And maybe, yeah, Advent is calling to me to do that because, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the last time I did that was what? It probably was something from Blessed is She.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I remember that was how I made friends, and I didn't keep all of them because we've ended up moving, different places, but the ones that I've kept have been deep and they've deepened. And yeah, I think in order for there to be a deeper intimacy, you need the prayer. You need that kind of spiritual connection, because then, well, what is this intimacy built upon? Like
Mm,
what's it coming? Like we can share about hard things, but if there's nothing to connect us through that, there's nothing pulling the healing to like, then
yes.
there's nothing to heal and make it just solid in our friendship. You could just, yeah, you can share hard things all day long, and
Yes.
then you're just sitting at a pity party. Like that's kind of what it is, you
It's
know?
I think what you're saying is so insightful because we can live on the surface. Life is really chaotic, things are urgent. There's kind of always something to be upset about, or something to just chat about. Like our lives move very fast. So unless we have, I would say, a resource, which for Jenna is the reason she started Blessed is She, is to give women a reason to get together. We all have this desire for friendship, for like true sisterhood, like a deep knowing of one another, a support, and a sisterhood, really. But we don't often know how to get there. And I think just sharing the surfacey stuff, even though I think that breeds familiarity, and we certainly laugh a lot, if we don't introduce kind of the bigger questions, the harder things, the more beautiful and lasting truths, then we can just have friendships of like convenience.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely, yeah, you're right. You're
And I
absolutely right.
I think we don't, because our lives move so fast, we aren't even always aware of like the deep desires of our hearts. And so to have something like an Advent devotional to say, hey, let's spend this month like really looking at hope, for example. And you
Mhm.
might think, gosh, I know about hope. I, I like hope. I've got hope. But if you spend 4 weeks talking with like a girlfriend or even a small group, and you begin to kind of unpack your own story, and 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 you look at the desires of your heart that are unfulfilled, maybe some deeper things kind of come to the surface that you can share with the Lord in prayer, and you can integrate into your life instead of just moving at this frantic pace and kind of on to the next thing. We're
Mhm.
actually, yeah, it's like we're settling into what really matters, into
Mhm.
into heaven, into love, into peace.
Mhm. Well, there's one question that I actually just thought of. So not to put you on
Yeah.
the spot, but to put you on the spot a little bit. Um, I think we're talking about such beautiful concepts where in a perfect world, if we opened our hearts to someone, they would want to receive us. They would want to do the
Yeah.
best they can to be a good friend. They would want to build on it in the same way we want to. But because we live in such a broken world, that's not always the case. And so I think sometimes women don't want to share their hearts. They're afraid
Yeah.
to because, well, what if I do and then that it gets broken? So if that was to happen, which I think it happens to every one of us, and you mentioned, that does happen to you, and it happens to everyone as we grow and, yeah, as we grow up. But for when you have opened your heart to a friend or whoever, and it's been broken.
Yeah.
How would you heal from that?
Oh, goodness. It's such an important question because I think it is a universal experience that just as life goes on, whether it's a move or whether it's a conversion, there are a million reasons that we either drift apart kind of gradually over time, or, we can experience really a dramatic fracture in a friendship. In fact, Jenna and I, in Blessed Is She, we have lots of conversations about this, and we kind of refer to it honestly as like a friendship breakup. Like, because it's very painful to share your life with someone and then suddenly they're not a part of that. And I've had a couple of those really painful friendship breakups. Again, some it's just life, right? It's hard to keep in touch, things like that. But that's not really what we're talking about, because that you could reach out. It might be awkward, but you could rekindle something. You could still call them if your mom passed away, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, but these like more painful friendship breakups, or where our friendship is betrayed, I just want to say that I'm sorry, because I do know the pain of that. And I still grieve the pain of some of those lost friendships. Um, I just continue to bring that to the Lord. Um, I'm still really hurting. I still miss that person, even though, again, like a breakup, like I know that friendship doesn't work anymore. I know we're so different now. Again, for a million reasons, that friendship isn't in my life anymore, but that doesn't make the pain. We can't reason our way out of heartbreak, which is what
Mm-hmm.
happens uh, when a friendship ends. And so I think in many ways, we have to grieve it the way we grieve any other loss. Um, we have to cry, we have to talk about it. I mean, I've talked about like my friendship breakup in therapy. Like and there's nothing wrong with that. It was a meaningful, intimate relationship. We grew up together and we're not friends anymore. It's disorienting, and you're tempted, as we always are when we've been hurt, we're tempted to kind of insulate ourselves against that kind of hurt again. But it just doesn't serve us. That's how the enemy, it's like he gets double for his trouble. There's been this painful split, and now he's going to prevent us from having more intimate friendship, or a different, friendship with someone else. Um, so just to be honest, I think about how much it hurts, even with good friends, to be honest, that like you're a wonder. Jenna and I talk about this all the time. You're my best friend, but it still hurt. I'm still missing this other person, right? We can't just replace friends. So to just bring it to the Lord again and again. This is something I find to be true about all kinds of healing. It takes as long as it takes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Give yourself time, give yourself permission to grieve, and again, like push against that. Try
Mm-hmm.
again. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap it all up, I know you've been giving lots of advice, but as a one final piece of advice, what would you tell women? It could be on this topic of friendship and sisterhood, or it could be something completely different. What would you tell women?
Oh, wow. Boy, that is wide open.
Sorry.
No, don't be.
Sorry.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize. I would just encourage you, urge you to fall in love with Jesus. He's so worth it. No matter what you're longing for, waiting for, how you might have been disappointed or hurt, he loves you more than you can possibly imagine. And that love is waiting for you in his word and in the sacraments and in the church, that he's worth the effort of discovering. In some ways, we were created in his image. And so, the same way that we long to be known and chosen and loved, discovered and celebrated, God too is desiring for us to pursue him, He wants us to discover him, and he reveals himself to us over time, slowly. He increases our capacity to know him and to receive his love. So I just want every woman to make it the aim of her life to know and love God, because he knew and loved us first.
Well, Beth, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, about the importance of friendship and sharing such wonderful advice on how to create, female friendships and community.
Oh gosh, I feel like we just got started, but hopefully there's something there and the Holy Spirit will just take it and seal in, a truth that was meant for you personally who are listening. Um, and if there was something kind of stirred here, to bring that into prayer, to share it with a friend, and and yeah, keep walking on the road to heaven.
And thank you so much for listening to the Woman Aesthetic Podcast. Let's connect on Instagram at the Woman Aesthetic Pod. And if you're loving the podcast, I would be so honored if you'd go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and leave me a review. Until next time.